My name is Laimoni Hutt. I'm the American Club president here at Arcata High School. First, I would like to acknowledge that Arcata High School is the ancestral lands of the Wiott people. Tribal chairperson. He is
Twilight. Hello, Dean Hernandez, Chairman. How are you guys today? So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little presentation of how we retrained Tuluwat, how it came back to us, because Tuluwat is the center of our world. Work this thing here. Can you guys hear me, or do I need this? Okay. Okay. Where's this button at? That's what happens when you get old. Dry sight gets bad. All right. So as you can see, California has the most tribes here in the States. We are traditionals in our years. That's our ancestral territory. A lot of our in it. So our little area is where people from. But it has a big for it. It is the world where we the it is where tragedy happened in the early 1860s that people are aware of, and we'll get into as well. Pre-attack. So we are a huge tribe. We were over the thousands in the 1800s. We were here on Memorial. This gets a little hard sometimes because it's about things that happen to us, and not just the cultures, but Yurok, Hupa, Karuk, everybody that surrounds our area. We're here. We have, I would say, one of the best resources here in the country. We had gold, we had survival. During the early days, we were gatherers, fishermen, medicine people that healed the world. We brought balance back to the world. And that's the main role, is bringing balance back to this world. Because if you don't have balance, the world balance. In the first worked with our sister tribes and tribes. We practiced ceremony together, almost together. Then, of course, first attack, the is to be discovered by the white settlers. But when they came in, it's all right.
Check, check. We apologize, but we are having technical difficulties live streaming the audio. We are shooting now. Please be patient. There is no speaker volume.
There's no volume?
No.
Right.
Check, check, check.
This is only peaking it here. No, that's peaking
check, check. Test. Check, radio check, check, checking levels, check, check. What if we just check, check, audio check, check, check.
OBS shows everything.
Unless-
I've got like a perfectly strong.
Unless
signal.
it's YouTube.
Could be
Check,
YouTube.
check. Test. Audio test. Test. Audio test. 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 Audio test. Live audio test. 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 Check, check, check. Audio test. This is the test of the audio system. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6.
No problem. So, while we're waiting for this, here, work our way this week.
Hi, my name is Maria. Hi, Catherine.
Yeah, I put everybody on the spot. Yeah, I'm nervous.
I'm Sienna.
Samantha. I'm Lemoni.
You got to keep this going, huh? Let me put my mask on because I'm getting a.
I'm Darcy in the College Center. I'm with Northern Humboldt.
Work my way over here.
Check, check. Live stream microphone 1, 2, 4, 5.
Usually what we want to do is we want to make sure we know everybody, introduce everybody, especially when we're at ceremonies, we also introduce ourselves as well. So it's important that we know who's here. That way we know. I think they're still working on the mic, huh? Hey, you hear me?
Live stream audio check. Live.
You guys wouldn't happen to have like a bottle of water? There we go. Right? Thank you. That okay. We have this technologist today. All right, so as I first check, when they're like how much is here, they're more early here. They just have we're like with fisheries. As here, we were people that we were really warring. We were early 100 gatherers, early 70s. Didn't want to work with the tribe. Here to the resources, share the but resources for our houses, medicine, for our food, but they didn't want to share it. So we get into the drastic part. Realizing that this land was so plentiful and they make money, decided to take it into their own hands to nearly wipe out the Wiyot tribe. On this map, you can see the massacre sites. There was a lot of people who realized that the massacre was just Indian Island, Tuluwat, but it wasn't. Angles, those massacres in Wiott country, but the main was, and the main during that time, February, we would be in our ceremony, or Renault ceremony. One of our high dances. Dance we did during the daytime. dance was used to bring back into us. All was used to bless season hunting with green. What we needed to do. For us, so they knew this. Here for they knew participate in this. They did what until we're out gathering that night, next day ceremony, because that ceremony is held during the day. They didn't bring guns because they wanted to be quiet. They brought clubs, knives, hatchets, axes, anything that can keep it quiet. Snuck across when the people were asleep. When they were all asleep is when they had to bludge it, stab most everybody that was in their houses or sleeping on the island. Sometimes it's pretty hard to talk about these things, but this is part of healing. So when they had done this tragedy, this real bad thing, they left. And they all massacred. But some act like dead. Walk with their children with staff on their side. Next morning when that was we don't know much. Purchased that next day after the massacre, and it became his end. And he did quite a few stuff on that. But there was also a gentleman who was a reporter that was going to do the news about this. But when the people found out, they pretty much ran him out of town. So he went to San Francisco, and his story got published in the New York Times. And then the rest of the States heard about the massacre. So that massacre became knowledge in the United States. Gunther took over the island, made it his farm. How many of you been over the island on the bridge? So you see, man made. Gunther decided to make those channels so his cattle can have water. But not realizing cattle can't drink salt water, and did other things on the island. He made a club, a small country club. He also made boats. But during that time, it was pretty much the island for fishing. Island using things that are supposed to be that things all in the world. That started all these things, and that's because the world wasn't no more. Over the time, he continued to do what he was supposed to do on that, make his fixes and other stuff. Especially, I hear about the country club, and that really upsets me because it was for bullying. That's quick. After that, we were still here, but we were not in the big numbers like we were. We were smaller. And remember I said earlier we were thousands. After the massacres, we dropped down to the hundreds. When the massacre happened, all the Wiyotts, they pretty much became either slaves or indentured servants, as we want to call them. There were bounties on their heads for scalps. If you're a native person, you had $5. People would hunt either for our scalps or put us into slavery. So what do? We became somebody else. What I mean by that, what is that? All of us, them say either or whatever they could instead of called keep them safe and they're safe. After they tried to move, they were moved to who? Up to up to the river. They're all up to down below, which is the valley, and reservations. But they kept coming home. They couldn't, because we knew we had to be back home. We knew we had to be back in our territory, because that's where we belonged. So the government realized that they could keep us in these other reservations. So they made us a reservation. Actually, they didn't make us a reservation. A small church in the those times bought a small piece of property, which is that little piece right up there, which is the old reservation. It wasn't that big, but they bought a tribe, and that's where we lived for almost 100 years, maybe so. But in time, while we're there, we decided something else. We decided to terminate native tribes. They decided to say, well, you don't practice your cultures no more, you don't practice your traditions, but we did it secretly because we didn't want people knowing what we did because we didn't want another massacre, so we kept it to ourselves and we kept it secret. Since we didn't share it, we decided we're going to terminate, and they took our right away from we had strong forests. Our family and I was out because I fought and it took a while to get recognition. Able to get our lawsuit, we became recognized, and then we were up on Table Bluff Reservation, which is maybe a mile and a half from the old reservation. Now, a lot of tribes have big reservations. Our reservation only sits on 88 acres, which is not huge. We have a total of probably about homes on that reservation. Like if you saw the map earlier, how big our ancestral territory was, we went from that big of ancestral territory to a small 88 acre reservation. It's what we call home. But not only did they fight for our recognition, they also fought for the return of Wiott. In the 70s, the family, this area, and to give back. Happened. Continue back. Albert was wilderness of islands with the we can find, we had vigils, and we did these vigils thanks to and listen sisters, a couple of other ladies, church did a vigil to recognize the massacre of 1860. So every year in February of 1860, on the 24th, they did a candlelight vigil at Woolly Island, overlooking the island, because we couldn't step on the island yet because it wasn't ours. They continued the vigils. Then they found out that there was 1.5 acres for sale on Wiott. So Cheryl Seidner approached, and she approached the council and asked to 1.5 acres. So they did a lot of fundraising. Articles, they did concerts, they did taco sales. They did everything they could to raise money to purchase the 1.5 acres. Now, you wouldn't think 1.5 would cost a lot of money. But this 1.5 acres that they're fundraising purchase was $100,000. 1.5 acres is just not even this size. They did all the National Congress of Native Americans. And she was doing a presentation. And she was talking about Indian Island and how it was unhealthy, how it was, and how it was trying to sit back. And this is what we call power. And her to their room, count was given to them, and they earned all the money needed in that one session to purchase the island. 1.5 acres. Came back, she told council, we made the next offer to purchase that 1.5 acres. And that 1.5 acres is this here. This is where the old shipyard used to be. This is where they did the repair work for the ships. As you can see, it's so contaminated. On this part of that 1.5 acres, there were lead paint, there were old batteries that made the walls to make sure the island didn't fall in the water, like retaining walls. There were old a village again. Imagine to what we got people that didn't stop the when they purchased the they came remove the tons of contamination from the island. And you know, we're grateful that we had all these volunteers who helped us. This is a scrap metal that was being by volunteers. The batteries that were there, that were still going into the bay, so our bay wasn't healthy either. More of the lead paint that was left there. And they just, you know, continue to remove these and put them in these dumpsters and these vans to haul them away. This is one of the original boat motors that was there. This motor still exists. And if you go to like, what's it, Fortuna Rodeo, when they have all this and they for this, out there on the island. But this old motor was still working, running, and the railroad, has this motor, and it's in their museum. But they use it for teaching people how bad the Indian Island was. Imagine moving that off a lot of work. The early 2000s. See the work again, wall there, sand now. Now, after they got everything off the island, we had to remove the soil because the soil was so contaminated that people couldn't walk on it still. So you seen in the later slides, you'll see guys in white suits. They look like what we make jokes about and call them Ghostbusters because they're all in white. To remove the soil. They didn't work in the clean. Part of the that we that it's like a fiberglass. They pounded into the sand, the clamshell. That's what the retaining wall is like now. It's no longer bad. So it's keeping the rest of the island from corroding and going into the. We did samples. And we were removing the dirt. So when we were removing the dirt, because of the contamination, we were hauling it off in barges. The leaf here, the dirt, burn the dirt. Well, that was doing, they started on some of the buildings that were tearing down these buildings that were no longer for people around. You can see, done in those years. Where homeless people come on the, they would make homeless to get the island. There's stuff that was left. Don't see them that much in the trees. They're in the tree lines. When you go past the road on the highway, they're in the tree lines, so they can't be seen. But they make their homes there, and they keep it. They were making it still contaminated because they would leave their dirty stuff there. So the tribe came together, and we started working with the city of Eureka. And remember, this part where the homeless camps at the time was not part of the tribe yet. It did not belong to the tribe. We tried to work with the city of Eureka, keep this and placing camps. We Eureka believe this is their mind. Once we had that homeless people still there, and we started. This is where I get the space, or what we call digging up the dirt to remove, get destroyed. These barrels that the dirt was put in because it's so contaminated. The dirt that was on the to get burnt. So we decided to the tell them that bad was trying to help see that. bad the island is. And this is one of the projects that work with you guys will help get where you need to be. So they came and they started helping to clean up. City of Eureka saw that. And Cheryl Sider knew this was the time to go at the time, the mayor of City of Eureka, get back that part of the island. So she went and had a meeting with Peter Lavelle, and she just asked Peter Lavelle, bring the island back. And, you know, she would probably get some backlash from Peter. He goes, let me see what I can do. Peter Lavelle also. And they all agreed that that island, which is on the side, should come back to the. So at that time, tribes and the city of Eureka worked together to return that. It took a couple years, and I'm going to try to skip this slide. A couple of years to do. When they did it, it was in 2004. There was a big ceremony. The 48, 1.5 acres. The city saw how much care the island, how much get better and get healthy again. To get back, knew it was the thing to do at the time. After the back in 40 back, because we had to remove grass there, but just part. We continued on the cleanup, and it wasn't until 2012 that we got clean health from saying the island. That part of the island was fully clean. There was no contaminants on it. It was clean. It was ready to be used. So when I was going back to talking about the dirt removal, we did this process where they came in, because you saw the drum barrels on how much that dirt was there. So it was costing us quite a penny to remove it. It was in the millions of dollars to remove all this. So we went with another process. This process was it would fill in. Topsoil from the rest of the contaminants that were on the ground. It became like a forest that protected the rest of the. Once we did that, on top, oil on top, that we knew that there were contaminants in it, and we put it on top. Come back, work, give it to the hub. Arcata found we were good. We complete the ceremony in 1860. We needed sisters because they weren't able to the matter. Plan for the ceremony. We didn't plan a new ceremony. We had to complete the old ceremony. We gathered our dancers, ceremonial people together, our cousin tribes, Yurok, Hoopa, they all helped us and assisted us. And I had the privilege to be the mentor for the men. Took the young men. In 14, we took the young men to the island to the ceremony with the young lady. We were there for 8 days. The young men that were there with started making traditional stools by hand, not with machine, all by hand with the traditional axes and hatchets that we had on the island. They started feeling that with the island. They started feeling connected to the island. In the past, we didn't feel connected to it. We didn't feel it like it was still ours. But when the young men started working with their hands, started singing their songs, started practicing their ceremonies, they started connected. They were able to take the dugouts, our boats, onto the bay. You know, that was that. Larry and his family, Chris, boats, how to be on. We did it's not young men. I didn't think this is their first. Stuff. Right? They managed to make the 10-day fast, and they were able to perform the ceremony. They were able to feel connected to the Tuluwat, able to feel the ancestors that were there with them. They were able to feel everything that was there spiritually. And when I asked one of the young men, he just said, I heard the elder speaking to me at night in my sleep. So the connection was made again. We were connected back to our people. So after the ceremony was completed, we knew our ancestors would be able to rest. And I'm going to go through these slides because I know we don't got much time left. But they were able to feel at peace. Our ceremonies. A lot of us know that we were having one of our ceremonies, men that were seen, had to postpone our ceremonies. Again, ceremony, and COVID hit. So we had to make the elders, and we had to keep it. So we did this, but we did ceremonies in our homes, in our homes, and our we yelled. But we still are looking for the day back to what the ceremonies. During that time, so the top of Cheryl side and her council, I had black hair at that time. It wasn't gray no more. But we were there, the signing of the Tula, the 40 acres, to the tribe. It felt good to have that acres back. But that wasn't enough. We wanted the rest of the island back because they needed to come home to the Wiott. Cheryl came to council, said if she would go and try to get the island back. And we all said yes. Let's move forward the rest of the island back. So at the time, the ministry came to council. He, wanted to apologize for the massacre. But at the time, the attorney stepped in and said, you can't say this, you can't say that, else you're going to hold the city of Eureka liable for the massacre. And we weren't really looking at that. We were like, he's coming to actually do an apology from his heart. And he meant what he says. He read the city of Eureka performed, but he read the he says this is not reach. Work on there. With our government to start working with each other. But then I'm not going to say individual, it's just bad case, I guess. He told the city, why are you giving it back to the Indians when it can be shared with everybody? Why would you say something like that? Why would you tell the community, why are we giving it back to the Indians when we can share it with my family and the people in Humboldt County? Well, we heard about it. We didn't like his comments. So we had youth come forward, not just Wiott youth, but youth from all over the county come and said, how can we help? And they took themselves to do a protest in front of this man's office. And they were so many people there that protest his office. He like disappeared nowhere. He nowhere to be. But he's still around. But he doesn't any of these rude stations anymore. We continue to the city of Eureka. It took a while because we have the right legals for this. Because in the so let me back up a little bit. When we received the 40 back, there were stipulations on the island. Stipulations that the city put because of the attorneys. That we would not put in the we would not build a casino on no economic on right. Will we do that? Better. We are people that what we need to do with our land. But that is what happened in this transaction. We had all stipulations that we could not do. Our attorneys, their attorneys, and they were the language and no. We want to be clear. We want the island to be healed and trust. We are not going to put a casino on the island. It was on a word of trust that they understood that we were not going to do this. We told them what it was. We told them that we want to bring the island back to health. We want to put the traditional village site, like James pictured, back to the island. They realized it. Let's come to our days and seeing how we are and how we do things. Realize there need to be stipulations. So we came together finally in 2019 and had everything together. In October 2019, when the 278 returned to the island. But also remember, there are still individuals who live on the island. A lot of people are worried they're moving from their home. So what do we do then? And that eases a little bit. That island, this is healing that by removing part, by removing. Once the island, you go to and traditional site on the, so we use it for educational purpose. So we can take students out and show them what the island means to us and why it means, because you all live in Wiott country. You need to understand Wiott history and Wiott culture. You know, my grandmother used to say, if somebody comes to the house and they're hungry, you feed them. If they're tired, you give them a place to rest. And if they wish to stay, you allow them to stay. So I look at it this way. We are all here in Humboldt County territory. We all live together. We all should know the history of the Wiott culture. Because in the old days, if you married into a tribe, you became part of that tribe. So I look at it this way. If you are here in Humboldt County and Wiyot Territory, and you live on Wiyot Territory, then you're part of our Wiott family. And that's how the healing begins. That's how healing begins. We can't live off the past and what happened in the past. We have to move forward for not just the elders, but for the younger generation. It's important to know that. Wiott is our center of our world. People were calling it Indian Island. Council changed that. So now the island is no longer called Indian Island. The island is no longer called Gunther Island. It is actually called Wiott. But Wiott was one of the villages that was on the island. There was 2 villages on the island. Wiott was the main village where we did the ceremony. We just preferred it being that name because that's where the ceremony was. That's where the healing began. So now legally it is called Wiott. is no longer Indian Island and is no longer Gunther Island. It is recognized as Tulwat. We still have a long ways to go, a long process to go to clean and do the healing, but we're doing it, and we're doing it together as a community, not just as a tribe, but as a community. We have not just Wiyot's helping, we have everybody helping. It's a community-based project. We have working with the governments, helping us clean the island, working with Caltrans, helping remove the invasive species off the island. It's all these government agencies and community that's working together to bring the island back to health, because these people know when the island's fully healthy again, then we can bring balance back into the world. And right now we don't have the balance. We have COVID, we're all wearing masks nowadays. You know, when I was a kid, I never thought I'd be wearing a mask speaking, but we're wearing these masks. We have addictions, we have murdered indigenous missing women. We have all this sickness that's happening in today's society, because that's the reason why, and I think of this way, is because the tribes are not allowed to practice what we need to practice. Once all the tribes start practicing our ceremonies and we're in unison and in sync, the healing process will begin. People thought that the Wiyot tribe lost our ceremonies, but I never say we did. Our ceremonies were asleep. Our ceremonies we didn't practice for ages. They were just sleeping. We had our cousin tribes, Ural, Kupa, and all the tribes that surround us help us bring back our ceremonies, help them wake them up. And our ceremonies are awake. We're not letting them go back to sleep. We're going to let them live and prosper like they're supposed to do. But like I said, until all the tribes get their ceremonial lands back, their healing can't begin. And one thing I can say about Eureka is that city of Eureka is one of the first cities in the United States to give back ceremonial lands without being purchased. And that's history. So now we're teaching other cities, agencies to work with their tribes to know that the tribal lands that they sit on, to give them back their ceremonial lands so that they can practice their ceremonies. Because once all the ceremonial lands become together, we can practice these ceremonies. We can come into the process of healing. We can bring balance back into this world. We can take away all the sicknesses. Because remember, when we were practicing ceremonies in the early days, there was not that much sickness going around. We were all healthy. We didn't have diabetes. We didn't have all the sickness that was here. It's because we lived a healthy life. We practiced ceremonies. We prayed to Creator. We prayed to God. Whoever we prayed to, we prayed to Him, and our prayers were answered. And that's where we need to get back to. And that's why I'm saying it's important that other city agencies, other government agencies see how important it is to give back tribal and that ceremonial lands. I think the best words was give it back. And that was by Professor Kitcher Risley Balding saying, give the land back. That's what I stand by today, is give the land back, give it to who it belongs to. And we're slowly getting there. Look, Patrick's Point is now changed to Sumig, the original name. People are seeing this. They're understanding the history and how important it is. Let's continue to move forward and make these changes. It's not just us elders that are going to do it. It's the younger generation. And that's you guys that are sitting here. It's you guys that are in your classrooms. You guys are going to be making the changes. You guys are going to be making the next history. You guys are going to be making things happen. Because you guys, the culture's inside you, your traditions are inside you, they're waking up. And you are going to be the changes. So we just got the ball rolling. Now it's your turn to just keep it rolling and moving forward. And bringing back homelands, and bringing back ceremonial lands, and bringing back traditional lands, bringing back traditional gatherings, bringing back traditional burns, bringing back our fisheries, bringing back our rivers back to life. You know, we're in this process together. You know, we're in that process of making sure that the Ill River becomes undammed. We want a free-flowing river so our salmon can live and salmon can be healthy. The Ill River was one of the biggest fisheries in the early 1900s where the United States got most of their salmon. But now our salmon are so sick because of what's going on with the dams, we have to make sure that dam comes down so they have all the water to come home to. But it's not like me doing it. It's going to be you, the younger generation, that pushes this forward. So, is there any questions? Because I can ramble. I can ramble and ramble around. But is there any questions right now? What can you do and how can you evolve? You can call the tribe. We're always looking for volunteers, interns. Especially with the youth, especially our natural resource department, they're always looking for people to do interns because our natural resource department is probably one of the best departments I think I can speak of. They do a lot of work on the rivers and everything, and they're always looking for younger generations to come in and help and assist. So just call the tribes. It was not just Wiott, call Wiott, call Hoopa, call Groot, call the tribes. Ask them what you can do to help, and I'm sure they'll find somewhere to put you to help. Any other questions, guys? One way I always tell people to show their respect is if you see an elder, talk to them, and they'll tell you how to show your respect and how to act in the community. But always ask your elders first, because they're the ones that hold our stories and they're the ones that teach us. But talk to them and they'll lead you in the right way to go. They will never, ever send you in the wrong direction. I grew up in Sacramento. I grew up in not knowing my culture. Truly, I did. My grandmother was one of them that was taken to the boarding schools at a young age. So when she went to these boarding schools with her siblings, she never told us about our history, about being Wiott until later in life. And when I asked her why she waited, it's because she was worried that we would be taken away as well. But when she felt it was safe is when she started telling us more about the Wiott culture. And when she realized I was moving back to the reservation, she started telling me the people who I should go talk to, the elders who I should go talk to, because they would teach me the ways and how I should act as a Wiott man. And I did. I approached these elders and I introduced myself. I introduced who my grandmother was and who my family was. And then they started opening up their houses to me and their thoughts and their minds, and they're telling me the stories about how we were as Wiott people. But you always got to let them know who you are and who your family are, because they're not just going to tell anybody who you are, but they need to know who you are. And I was so, blessed to have these elders tell me these stories, as well as Yurok elders and Hoopa elders and Karuk elders that knew my grandmother and told me the stories on how to act like a young Wiott man. So I moved back to the reservation when I was in my 30s with my family. And it was, once I learned these, my children learned it as well. And they are like you. They are moving forward and making things happen. My oldest is making films on traditional lands. She made a small film for her master's called Duke. You guys can look it up on Facebook. It's Duke. It's regarding the boarding schools. My second oldest is working for the Yurok tribe as a Head Start teacher and working with their children. My children are doing successful things because they are taught by the elders on how to proceed and how to move forward in life. Not by, taught by me. Yes, I gave my kids some teaching, as well as my wife. But most of their tots were taught by the elders, especially at ceremonies and dances. They sat with the elders and they talked to the elders, and that made them successful in what they do. So whenever you see an elder, talk to them, listen to their stories, and you will get so much information, so much history from them, and they will teach you what you need to know. So, I want to say thank you for having me. And I am so honored, because this is actually the first time I actually spoke to a high school. Usually I'm speaking to the grammar schools. But it's being able to speak to the older generation and you guys understanding more how the tragedy was and the massacre, and, it wasn't all pretty back then, is that you guys are going to be able to carry it on to your younger siblings and your family about the history. You're going to be able to tell them, hey, this is what I know about Tuluwat. This is what I heard about Tuluwat today. This is what I heard about the Wiyot people. Just know that we share this whole Wiyot territory together. and it's ours to protect and keep safe. Mm-hmm. So we're working on a curriculum right now. The cultural department is working on a curriculum, as well as we're getting ready to open our new cultural center in Old Town Eureka. So we'll be able to do class tours there and bring people there to do educational tours there as well, because we want the people to understand the history, and we can do tours down to the island and explain the history of where we're at. So we're going to be right there in Old Town, right where the gazebo's at, where the old Restoration hardware store used to be. That is going to be the new cultural center. And I'm just going to put this out there if anybody's interested. We will be looking for people to help run the building as well, the youth to come help assist us with it as well. So our goal is to hopefully have it open by January, but we're going to invite the schools. Everybody who wants to have lessons and learn will be able to come to the center. And what we'll do is, our plan is this. If we have classes come, we will shut down the center just for the class to come in and learn the history, because it's important. Mm-hmm. I think I took a lot of your time, guys, with the technical difficulties. Well, thank you for having me, guys.